Okay, so it was a box, that's right. Anyone feel what was in the box? Some of you guys did.
I thought it was cotton.
Cotton, okay. Who else actually felt inside the box? What was it?
It was like those cotton things that you put on top box and you put nice gifts in and you don't want to mess up.
Okay, like something you wrap something in, okay. Anybody else feel anything else besides that it was a box and had cotton in it? There was actually something inside the cotton. It was small though. I don't know if anyone felt it. Did you feel it? What was it?
I don't know for sure, but it felt kind of like, the rocks that are in the tumbler and they get real shiny and blue.
Okay, so it was something shiny. Yeah, you're getting.
Kind of shaped like a bowling pin.
Yeah, you're getting close. Good. Anyone else touch what was in it? Anybody else? Wow, so were you, I know someone over here did, yeah.
I have no idea what it was, but it was smooth and cool to the touch, and I don't know, it reminded me of maybe, again, a rock that had been tumbled, or
Okay, so it was little though, right?
Yeah.
Okay, let me see if I can find it in this little box. Anyone else want one more guess? So it was a box, okay? And there was, and here's what was inside the actual thing. It was a Matryoshka little thing. You know what Matryoshka is? It's a Russian doll. This is just a porcelain one, but the real ones, they're nesting dolls, so they have all these dolls inside of it. But this has a little story to it. How many of you guys know what holiday we're finishing, like big holiday down in New Orleans? What is it? Mardi Gras. This came out of a what? Anybody want to guess? King cake. This was the baby in a king cake. So one of my friends was down for Mardi Gras a couple weeks ago, and he and his friend bought a king cake. They ate it, and he got the baby. So for my birthday, he gave me the baby. How did you guys try to figure out what this was? What senses did you use? Anybody want to share? A couple of you want to share? You felt, right? A lot of you guys felt. Okay, what else? Sound, okay. What else? How many? Go ahead.
Experienced before, so.
Something you'd experienced before, okay. Association, trying to make a connection maybe with, like you were saying, something that was familiar. Yeah. The purpose of doing an activity like this is, and by the way, this is something that's really interesting to do like in a staff training. You can do anything, but it's a good idea to have something that's a little different inside something and see who actually opens up the box and tries to find it, because that's always really interesting. Some people, all they want to do is feel this and they're done. And it's like, but there's something in it, and they don't want to really know what's in it. So that's always really interesting to see who actually does that. The point of this is that how do we teach our students things that are unknown, right? Because this was something that was unknown to you all. And some of you were really struggled with that. Some of you were like, I don't care what's in it, it's a box, who cares? So the rest of you, Tammy really spent some time, like she put both her hands in there, really felt around, she was really trying to figure out what it was, so she could then describe it to the person that she was sitting next to. So how do we teach our students what the things that are unknown about themselves, about our practice, about the context that we're working in? And you have to be really creative sometimes, and especially when you do staff trainings with people who've worked for a long time in that setting, right? You're in hospice, okay, I'm sharing it. There's lots of people who worked in hospice for a really, really long time. They're very familiar with that process, but there's still unknowns about it, right? Sometimes it's a good idea to revisit what those unknowns are. On your handouts, this little manifesto has a lot in it, but it's something that's nice to kind of look at once in a while. Maybe cut it out and put it up on your desk or somewhere where you can see it and look at it. When we're trying to explain to students about what the unknowns are, about those areas that we don't see about ourselves or about other people, all of us have hidden aspects of ourselves. Some of us are very open about who we are, at least on the surface, right? Well, I'm not a Southerner. I've not grown up in the South. I've lived here about 20 years. But what is interesting to me, I've lived all over the world, so I'm very familiar with different cultures. Southern culture is very interesting to me because people are very friendly. Wouldn't you say? Y'all are so nice. You just bless your heart. You hear things like that a lot, right? I'm so glad to have met you. But Southerners, sometimes that's as far as they go, okay? Why is that in the South, do you think? People are very friendly, but the surface kind of friendly. Because Why? Some of you who are Southern. Y'all from here? Yes? They're friendly, yes. Private, what else?
Uncomfortable with something new.
Uncomfortable with something new. Especially when it's clear you're not from here, right? Because I can do the accent. Y'all guns, let me carry you. No, I know some of the words, but I'm still not from here, right? Yes. So that's something interesting about Southern culture is people are extremely friendly in the South. When you talk to folks who come and visit here, they always talk about that Southern hospitality, right? But to get to know someone in the South, it takes a while, just because of kind of that reticence, I guess, in sharing themselves, which applies to us as social workers. When we are going through our training, what did we learn about sharing ourselves? What were some of the messages we got? Don't? Don't?
Keep your profession.
So we have the professional self and the private self, right? So don't those two coexist? How do they coexist?
Well, for me, I think it should be, I tell the people, I can't go into a stranger's house and tell me all your personal information, yet they don't know anything about me. You know, there has to be a balance where a person feels comfortable. You don't have to give them their life story, but they should know that you're human too, and that you've gone through things, and that you can help them and that you understand. If all they see that professional is kind of bored to put up, because I don't know if you're going to help them, if you
Right.
can understand.
And if you're working with children's services, for example, and you're going into someone's home and talking to them about parenting, whatever, what's a question they want to know? Do you have children, right? Is that a legitimate question?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think that a certain amount of self-disclosure is important. You just have to use discernment about what to share and when to share it.
Because the two can bleed over a lot. If you're going through some stuff in your personal life, you can really bleed over into your professional life, right? So those two selves that are coexisting can get a little messy sometimes. Why is it though, when we talk about self-disclosure and thinking back to how you went through your educational training process, what are some areas where it can get a little messy sometimes when we think about sharing our public self and our private self? We all have those two things. Okay? And social media nowadays makes it really interesting, all right? Should I friend clients on Facebook? Should I? Well, that's a question that's out there. I mean, I would never do that, but there's definitely some people who kind of say, well, it could be a good way for people to support each other, though, if I create a public kind of place where people can, help each other out. Do I have an account on Twitter? Do I make it public? And if I do, what do I put on there? Do I put political things? Do I put religious things? Do I put my own personal opinions about what's going on in the world? So where does it get a little messy, especially in today's world, I think? The public and the private self. What do y'all think? How many of you guys have a Facebook account? Yeah. Who is on Instagram? Anybody in here on Instagram? You're on Instagram? Go ahead, Ron. I'm like, Snapchat? Anybody on Snapchat in here? That's like teenage stuff. Twitter? Anyone in here on Twitter? Okay. Yeah. Anybody have a Facebook page? A web page for either some of your private practice, or some of you just do it for fun, or have a blog or anything? Anybody in here have that? Okay. So how do you keep those things, that boundary? You want to comment, Robin?
Well,
Because people can search for you and they can
the
find
blog
you.
hasn't been used in a while, so at this point I haven't really thought about the blog, but it was my husband and I used it for family stuff. But Facebook, I keep my privacy settings very private. Like I make sure it's just friends. I'm very careful about who I friend.
What about friending coworkers?
Well, I have a lot of struggle with that. I left for 15 months when I had my second daughter, and I friended a lot of people that I used to work with, not knowing I was coming back. And then now I'm still friends with some of them.
Some of them, yeah.
And don't get me wrong, I love them, but some of them are friends with clients, like different roles.
Right.
I'm a social worker, they're not.
Right.
So, or former clients. And so I have to keep everything just friends. I can't even do friends with friends unless I do friends with them. So,
Right.
yeah.
Right. Because the way Facebook works, when you post something, a friend of a friend, if you haven't said it, can see that. So you might be thinking you're posting just to your friends, and it could be, like you said, a client or something, okay?
And I do a lot of self-edit what I post.
Yeah, that's my
even
next
so, just
question.
in case.
Yeah, that's my next question. Okay, who else in here wants to talk about Facebook. Are you on Facebook? Suzanne, you're not. Share why.
I think a lot of what she was just talking about, that it is just so easy to get into areas of boundaries
Yep.
that we as clinicians and social workers have to be very careful about with our clients. And so a lot of my clients who ask me that actually, teenage clients,
Oh, I'm sure.
with me, if I'm on, and I explain that to them and let them know the reason as to why I feel like it is better for you to keep that boundary. I've had adult clients too ask that question. So I'm not saying that it's wrong. I think it's just something that you have to monitor and supervise and be so, on point about making sure that those boundaries are not crossed. You're respected as someone that is not in a friendship role with your clients. So that's too much for me. It just takes too much time and energy to try to do that. So I just say no.
And it goes to what you were saying too about you have to really screen yourself.
You do.
I think when you post things, because the other question is then when you have the public and the private self, and if you have some blending of those things, are you acting as the professional self or the private self when you're posting stuff on there? You really have to think about things like that. The other piece of this is what about students or supervisors who say, can I friend you on Facebook? Can I follow you Instagram? You're on Instagram. What are your thoughts on that? No? Okay.
I always wait till they're finished with me.
Okay. Yeah, and I think that's a reasonable thing. I always tell my students at the beginning of every class, do not friend me on Facebook, ever. You may friend Arthur, my cat. Arthur's cool. Arthur is a very dull life. He's overweight and he's dumb. But you can friend him. He has a page on Facebook. Seriously, he does. And my daughter is his manager. You can friend Arthur on Facebook. That's fine. Do not friend me. And then once you graduate, you can ask me, but I always evaluate all requests. It doesn't mean that just because you were my former student, I'm going to do that. And I have over the years, and that's been okay. But that's still sometimes a little bit of a gray area. Anybody else want to comment on the Facebook problem?
Not Facebook, but LinkedIn.
Oh yeah, I was just going to LinkedIn. Yep. Anyone in here on LinkedIn? Yes. No. Oh, not half you guys are on LinkedIn. Okay.
Everybody, yeah, I've been getting a lot of those, and it's to my work computer, and I'm getting random ones, I'm not on it, I haven't access.
Let's talk about that.
LinkedIn.
Because I'm always scared, it's my work computer, I don't know if I hit that, if it's gonna go somewhere crazy,
I just go straight to the site.
Yes.
If someone's requested it, I just go straight to the site to see.
And you
if they
can.
look- Yeah.
I mean, I will say LinkedIn is great for networking. It is, and it is a professional site. Like, you're not going to see on there pictures of babies and kittens, okay? It really is a more professional site. It is good for networking, but again, it's another one you got to keep up with. And then on there too, you can link it to your Twitter, to your Facebook, to your email, whatever it is that you're on. So I think it comes down also to time. How much time do we all have to manage all the social media stuff? But I do encourage some of you all, as you think about, forward thinking in terms of our practice, social workers lag the furthest behind any other profession in technology. We're awful when it comes to that. And that is problematic over time, okay? One of the emerging fields in practice is telehealth. How many of you guys know what telehealth is? Yes, it's where you and I, you can be my therapist, and we'll talk over a secure connection. It's not Skype.
Right.
It's a secure HIPAA compliant connection. Most social workers don't even know what that is, okay? Even though it's a really great resource for rural areas, for reaching underserved communities and things like that. So we as a profession need to really be thoughtful about how we use technology, but we've got to use it. I mean, the bottom line is here, and we've got to make the effort to use it. So when you look on the Self-Reflection Manifesto, some of the questions on there, they're more self-reflective questions. But the point is that when I'm thinking about my professional and my personal self, there are always going to be areas of dissonance, right? So there's always going to be areas where, I feel really strongly, for example, those of you that know me well know that I'm a very strong advocate for social justice and human rights. It's a huge thing I've always practiced in my profession. Personally, I am as well, but it can be a really fine line where I have a pretty diverse group of friends that all of them are not all necessarily in agreement of how I think about things. So I do try to edit myself a little bit when it comes to limit in the personal sphere what I talk about. And in the professional sphere, to create a space where people can talk about things. That's really important to do that. You know, if you're going to be ranting against whatever, fill in the blank, that's going to shut down a lot of people, all right? So I encourage you all, some of you who feel passionate about issues, to feel passionate in a way that's inviting and inclusive, right? Not just to say, well, if you don't believe how I believe, well, we really can't talk anymore. You know, when I see this person, I'm not talking to her. She's so racist, she's so sexist, she's so whatever. That person might be.
I
Okay?
think that's a real problem.
It is.
On those, you know, I have a neighbor who he and I have, every time, and I just say, you know what, I'm glad we live in a country where we are allowed to agree to disagree.
Yep.
And really we should talk about
And
the
sometimes
weather.
that,
I
yeah,
mean, you know,
sometimes
but
that's
I
okay.
had to hide him from my Facebook stuff because I was like, whoa, he lives across the street from me.
Yeah. And that can be really intense. I mean, and it can be so negative, right?
Yeah, it was awful. I
Yeah.
couldn't stand, you know, but then, you know, you defriend somebody who's your neighbor, you know, it's
Who's
like,
your
it's
neighbor.
awful. I mean,
It really
but
creates some
there's a
interesting
lot of
dilemmas.
that kind of stuff that people, and the other thing I think is just something that we should talk about as well, is that even Google, there is the way the computer systems work. What I Google, if I say geriatric social worker, and I Google that, the information that I get is what Google thinks I want
Right.
to see.
Right.
So it would be different than my neighbor who has a completely different opinion than me.
Exactly. Yep.
He would get a different search results. And I don't think we think about that, but when,
And
you know,
that
when
goes
we're
back to,
talking about
yeah.
ethics.
And it goes back to the technology question too, is that just because we have access to all this information, how do we use it? And how do we get it? How do we filter it? And then how do we use it in the best way possible? Yeah, that's a great example actually. And a lot of people don't know that. It's really funny sometimes on Google to go to type a little search or to start a search and it'll list like the top 10 searches. Some of them are crazy, like how to become a mermaid. Seriously. Like you go and go, people really look up things like that? It's really funny. So you never know how their whole analytics system works. On the second page of your handout, there are a couple questions. So one of the things that I think is always challenging in our professional development and our journey through this work is what is my view or my standpoint of what I do. We often don't think about that. We're very busy. We're trying to get through what we do to, help folks that we work with, to connect them, to, listen, et cetera, et cetera. But we need to be aware of our gifts and our strengths and our limitations. We talk a lot with students, right, about areas of growth. And for those of you who are a real strengths person, instead of saying areas of challenge, we say areas of growth, right? So we talk with our students about that, but what about ourselves, right? Some of you in here have been social workers for a long time, but we always have areas that we can grow in, all right? We always have blind spots that sometimes catch us and trip us up, and we forget that we have that blind spot. Anybody here want to share a blind spot they're comfortable with sharing? We all have them. Some of us got a lot of them. And we're really good, I think, at navigating through those sometimes, just through the busyness of what we do.
As a clinician, a lot of times people come in, of course, they want you to fix their problems. And so over the time that I have worked with kids and families, I have really had to work on growing in the area that I am not a fixer, and that I don't set that expectation for myself, that I am here to lead and guide people to try to find a better solution or live healthier, but that I don't take on that responsibility that I can make a difference for people.
Yeah, that's a good example. And I think all of us struggle with that, right? Because we're earnest people. Social workers are the most earnest people in the world. They really are. When you meet a social worker, even before they tell you they're a social worker, you know, right? Because they're so earnest and they just really want to be helpful.
They want to help.
Yes, that's actually absolutely how we're socialized. But there's a consequence to that. And over time, that can lead to burnout. If you don't manage that, right? Okay. What's another blind spot social workers struggle with?
Well, I know this was early in my career, actually, in training. I thought that I absolutely wanted to do child advocacy. And I actually tell my students this at the very beginning. I knew that's what I wanted to do until I did it.
and I wanted to kill perpetrators, and I wanted to take children home with me.
Yeah.
My husband was like, Amy, I couldn't sleep at night, I couldn't
Yes,
stand it, I
I
was
know.
dreaming about feeding children, and that's when I realized, for me, that was a spot that I could not separate from in a productive way in that field. Because I'm like, I don't think it's a good thing if I want to kill people. Like,
No.
that's not, as a social worker, that's not a good thing.
It goes back to earnest, it's not really helpful.
Right.
That's
And
true.
so, so I think always really realizing kind of what the population, and, so from that point on, I went actually to the other completely end of the spectrum, and I work in geriatrics, and sometimes people say to me, I don't know how you work with
Right.
old people.
Right.
And I think because everybody has a population that is a good population for them, and you kind of maybe have to figure it out.
You do.
You may think it's absolutely this. That was definitely what I was going to do.
Yeah.
But obviously it's not.
And I think part of that comes with experience,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
having an encounter with somebody in your life, no, this is not right.
For me, it's taken time to figure out that it's okay to have the emotions that I have. For so long, the social worker was so blatantly protected, so
Oh,
earnest,
yeah.
and then when we have natural human reactions and emotions, I think we feel extra guilty or shame ourselves
agree.
about it, and that's not healthy.
Right,
For me,
right.
that was a blind spot, and I went to the point where I allow myself even just to breathe with some of those emotions and then move forward.
Exactly. And I
Without
know,
shame.
yeah, and it is a good point, because I think, again, it goes to the earnestness, to being socialized, to really, I don't have any biases, I like everyone. That's a real common saying in social work. You talk to anybody who's a social worker, none of the isms apply to me, because I am a social worker, all right? And that is that will trip you up the worst. The isms are where we have a lot of blind spots, actually. What are some blind spots we have with students that we are supervising? Come on now. We were all students, we were all special at one time. I mean that with absolute love and respect, okay? What are some blind spots we have with students that push our buttons that we have to work on?
Sometimes, I'm so overwhelmed or tired when I'm meeting with my student, and I try and center myself before I meet with her so I can just be present for
Yeah,
her.
yeah.
But I just find myself, and I'm trying to be very aware of the emotions that go through, but I find myself getting irritated. I go through this cycle and then just give it up going, all right, well, let's just do all three support. And instead of really giving her what she needs and not speaking the truth, just because you're so tired from working your day, and it's not fair. So
And there's not, unfortunately, a lot of research about field instructors' perceptions of students, et cetera, but the little that there is out there, we try to be happy people, right?
yeah,
So even though you have boundary issues, you are unprofessional, you are late, you've said some very racist comments to clients, when we meet, what am I going to say to you? As social, no, I'm being serious. Sherry, you're trying so hard. I'm so proud of you. Right? No, it's true. And everyone's laughing because that's what they've done, right? So again, it's that strengths perspective, which sometimes is not appropriate, okay? Sometimes the appropriate thing is to say, I'm very concerned, Sherry. Yesterday when you were talking to a client, you said some things that really troubled me. We need to look at why you said those things. But that takes energy and effort, right?
and sometimes you don't have to have to,
Exactly.
because your boss is
Right.
cracking the whip.
Right.
I had a lot of excellent social work students from both schools that I work with, multiple schools, but there have been a couple that have had some areas of struggle, and I think recently, I've had some meetings anyway. Recently, I've kind of just been really thinking about, okay, the bottom line is, do I want this person out there in the professional social work dealing with the clients I deal with?
And being my colleague.
And so if I feel like it's somebody who needs some work but can do it, I have that viewpoint, if I feel like it's someone who can't, which I really haven't had that, I have to say, but I've had to evaluate that with some people, you know. That's kind of been, I have to think about that as a profession ethically. You know, it's not appropriate for me to be, you know, giving my blessing to
Yeah,
someone else.
absolutely, because one of our guiding principles is what? Competence, right? We are to hold each other accountable to the code of ethics, to professional conduct, but it can get very uncomfortable. I mean, and we're just talking about students now, we're not even talking about each other. That's like a whole other trade.
That's what I'm saying. For me, it's this, and this young generation comes in, and they're in their homes, and they're doing this, and it's driving me crazy. But I think we don't say anything, and I hate to say it, because sometimes you hear coworkers talk ugly or down about clients. So when the students come in and they hear the other workers doing it, then they are getting, well, this is okay. Then if you're not their skilled supervisor and you really can't say anything to them, and you know that this is wrong, but they're not saying anything, and they tell you, oh, your student did a wonderful thing, and I'm sitting here going, oh, no, they didn't, but that's not mine. But I think we've kind of been taught, you know, you don't say anything to your coworkers, it's not your place, and if the boss doesn't say anything, you don't get to. So now we have students coming in, picking up bad habits from the staff.
Well, and seeing behaviors modeled that no one does anything about, right?
Yep.
Y'all were laughing over here when I said anything.
Well, I keep in touch with my past students, and a couple of them I continue to mentor, and one of them called me and was telling me about some things that were going on in her department where she's working, and they said something like, yeah, well, when you get, you know, when you keep doing this a while, you won't spend as much time with client patients, and you won't do that, whatever. And she said to me, which kind of made me happy, she goes, I heard your voice in my head saying, no, 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 if I get like that, I need to go and be a greeter at Walmart, you know?
That's true.
So,
And I think we don't, and I would encourage you all to go back to what Rob and Shay were kind of saying. We never know what we say to a student that sticks, okay? That 10 years later, and I'm with you, I've had many students, I keep in touch with many too, who will say, I remember what you said in class, or when we had supervision, you said this, and I've never forgotten it because it's so basic, but it's stuck, right? So we never know when we have those learning moments, we are tired, but we can say to that student with support, right? Let's look at this, because you're going to do it again if we don't look at it. And yes, then the student can say, like you were saying, but this person over here, they say that all the time. No one says anything to them. We're talking about you. You are my student, you are in a learning process, and this is your opportunity. I think whenever you can frame it as a learning process, sometimes people hear it better than just to say, you're doing this or that. We need awareness of both our beliefs, our assumptions, our emotions, and our motivations. Motivations are very tricky. We don't always know what motivates ourselves and what motivates people to act in the ways that they do. I would argue that a lot of times fear is underneath a lot of the reasons why people do things, say things, act certain ways. Fear is something that people don't have a hard time unpacking and looking at because all of us struggle with that. And so when you look at someone who's behaving in a certain way, I would always ask myself the question, what are they afraid of? And that usually will help you maybe get to that issue. And sometimes you can say to a student, Matt, I've noticed every time we talk about this topic, you change the topic. Is there something about that you're scared of? Or did you grow up hearing something about this group, this person, this experience that really concerns you? Sometimes you can get at things that are under that. What about religious beliefs? That could be a real interesting area of practice and supervision. Some of us, I mean, there's a lot of diversity of religion in here for sure. There's also people who are not believers, okay? Or people who are very struggling with their faith journey. How do we respect that, honor it, and help people not let it bleed over into what we do? What do y'all think about that?
And I actually feel bad, but at the same time, I don't feel bad because she's the real world. She's a student in the Samaritan Center on faith base.
Yep.
But I've had her read choice theory about her history. We were discussing this, she said this was written by each mom. And it was just like, I mean, she just
great learning moment. I know she won't forget it.
It's
Yeah.
a huge teaching moment, absolutely, and I'm so fortunate that we did have that conversation.
Absolutely.
In the real world yet, when that happened.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah.
We have a different perspective, you know, experience. We don't talk about